How many people here would say America has a political divide? Raise your hands. You may have experienced it with your own classmates, your family, your friends, or when you stumble across an extremely different political belief online than the one you currently hold. It's no secret. According to Pew Research Center, America's political divide has increased to the point where both sides have crossed from critique about each other's politics into beliefs that the people themselves on the other side are dishonest, immoral, closed-minded, and unintelligent for voting differently. While interracial and interfaith relationships and marriages are on the rise, marriages or relationships between people of differing political views is falling sharply. Political prejudice now also affects hiring practices and even perceptions of physical attractiveness. And there's danger in that. Research shows political prejudice can lay the groundwork for anti-democratic practices, meaning feelings of political prejudice have been led to fuel fake news on both sides, contribute to poor health, and encourage stereotyping. History tells us that genocides, wars, and political factions of the past rely on this kind of base thinking where we stereotype one another and close each other out without hearing each other's perspectives or stories. How did we get here? And more importantly, what do we do about it? In January 2017, in the wake of Donald Trump winning the presidency, I became very interested in what motivated people to vote for him. As someone who considers themselves a moderate liberal with some conservative leanings, I was personally appalled by Trump's language, approach, and policies. But some of the people who voted for him were my colleagues and my students. So I began to ask questions and to listen. I realized most people on both sides of the political divide in this country were similarly baffled by each other, and that communication between these groups was on a downward slope. At the time, I was in my PhD program, and so I decided to try and apply what's called rhetorical listening strategies to the problem. You might be thinking, what is that? Let me break it down. Rhetorical listening is a type of listening anyone can try when approaching a person that they feel they disagree with. What makes it different is that most of the work on listening theorizes that people have to find something in common in order to truly listen to someone who is different from them. This could be like, we're both mothers, or we're both students, or we have a common enemy, so I can listen to what you have to say without necessarily agreeing. But the problem is, that commonality doesn't always happen. What if the person or text we're listening to is completely different from us, and we find no common ground to share? Rhetorical listening is the theory that even if we find nothing in common with a person, a text, or a culture, we can still approach the conversation from a stance of openness. So let's say you come across some comments on social media or a conversation with your uncle that's the complete opposite of everything you stand for and believe in politically. If you are trying rhetorical listening, you would try to hear what the other person has to say from a stance of openness, meaning you're open to hearing it despite disagreeing with it and despite not finding any common ground. In other words, it means two people can talk to each other, or someone can read text with which they disagree and be open to listening, rather than feeling closed off or disengaged. But rhetorical listening is a theory, and so often when we encounter someone or something that disagrees with us, it turns hostile. So how do we actually effectively rhetorically listen? What are the tools? Where do we begin? Well, in my research, I came across a practice Quaker Gene Hoffman developed called compassionate listening. Part of compassionate listening is a set of strategies anyone can use when approaching a person that they feel they disagree with. It helps with resisting stereotypes and prejudices, and it's comprised of 3 simple questions. 1, what is the person who is speaking factually saying? 2, what do I think this person is feeling? And 3, what do I think this person values? And I wondered, do these questions actually work with Americans who vehemently disagree politically? More importantly, do they apply if we use rhetorical listening to say neither person has to change each other's mind and they don't have to find anything in common? Could people really be open to hearing another person's political point of view? So I tried it. In 2019, I recruited participants from across the political spectrum in America. interviewed them to take down their stories and political opinions, and worked with them to poeticize those stories as poetry is shown to foster listening. I then paired each participant with another who I knew they disagreed with and had them read one another's stories and political opinions. In doing so, I tried to measure their openness in relation to the other person. In other words, they did not have to agree with each other or see things the same or find anything in common. But could they listen anyway? And what was the result of that listening? Would they feel more closed off or, with the help of listening for facts, feelings, and values, more open? In order to do this, I measured their openness to the other person both before and after introducing the listening strategies. And let me tell you, the before was not promising. These people disagreed and tended to stereotype one another as much as you imagine any two people who disagree politically would. They said things like, "This is the type of person I try to stay away from for sure." And, "It sounds like someone else said it and she just repeated it." And, "I don't want to hear it. I know what your logic is." However, after the same participants intentionally applied listening strategies, the results were astounding. Once people listened, truly listened, and asked themselves, what is this person saying? What do I think they're feeling? And finally, what do I think they value? All but one person in the study reported feeling increased openness to someone holding another political view. Their feelings of closeness dropped, their assumptions, and their feelings of depression in regards to the interaction all fell. They said things like, "I don't agree with their opinion, but I definitely understand more where they come from." And, "I definitely have a clearer understanding of what they might be thinking. I guess I didn't really pay attention a whole lot to what they said before." And, "I'm trying to see what she said without being judgmental, instead of just having my opinions already." And the most amazing part is that when asked, the majority of participants still said they did not agree with the other person and continued to focus on pointing out differences between them. This is groundbreaking because it suggests that it is possible to listen to someone and remain open without necessarily finding anything in common. So what does this mean? As an English professor, I can't help but notice how our discipline and the American culture at large frequently promotes the ability to make an argument and express yourself well in speaking and writing. Don't get me wrong, these skills are important and necessary, but when they go unbalanced without any attention to how we listen, we all end up talking without ever really hearing what the other person has to say. Or more importantly, recognizing that they are a person, regardless of their political beliefs and affiliations. When we lose sight of that and rely on stereotypes and assumptions to inform ourselves about other people's stories or experiences, we are on dangerous ground indeed. Staying open while preserving our diversity of thought and opinion is one of the most important things we can do as Americans and as humans. Rhetorical listening through compassionate listening strategies offers one way to do that. Thank you.